Okay, so before we start our group discussion, I'm just going to run through some history of uh, AI imagery, and then we'll go to more of the current stuff as of November 2023, and then we'll start talking. Okay. Um, So here we are in 2015. This is an image that was generated by AI, so you can kind of see the kind of stuff it was making then. Not great. 2019, there's a portrait, better-ish, I suppose. But hey, you can tell what it is. It's a portrait. So 2019, and we're going to jump to 2023, and now you can generate much better portraits and imagery, and you can see the difference between there and there. Here's a photo from 2022 AI tech with DALL-E 2, and then in 2023 there's DALL-E 3, so you can tell the difference. Pretty remarkable for just a year. Yep. Here's a 2022 DALL-E 2 image of Donald Trump and President Obama playing basketball. And then I asked it to DALL-E 3 to do the same thing, and vast difference. This, in honor of the name of our podcast, the Callithumpian Parade, I asked it to make me a pen and ink drawing of a Callithumpian parade. That's DALL-E 2. And then DALL-E 3, the same exact prompt, and that's what it made. Then I asked DALL-E 2 to make some children's book illustration style art of the Callithumpian Parade, and that's what it made. And then here's what DALL-E 3 makes. And some more. In the one on the right there, I changed the prompt a little and just said, please fill it with animals instead of people in the parade. On this one, on the left, that's me asking DALL-E 2 to make a Callithumpian parade in the style of a 3D animated movie. Not so good. And then on the one on the right, I asked DALL-E 3 the same thing, and you can see the improvement with that as well. Here we go. I took the same prompt, but then I just said do it in, or have it influenced by the Munsters TV show. And the one on the left, I guess, tried to do that. I can't really see much there. I guess there's some old-fashioned dress and stuff. But the one on the right, clearly much better. Then I'm just going to quickly go over a really simple explanation of kind of some of the process that goes into making these images, or how AI is doing this. So the AI systems like this are trained first to recognize what things are. So here, it's showing a whole bunch of cats, and it starts to recognize what is a cat, what a cat looks like, sees thousands and thousands of pictures of cats, and understands what cats are. Then the researchers would take a picture of a cat, add a little noise, and then ask the AIs to reverse engineer it back to an image of a cat without any noise. Then they'd add more noise, and they'd reverse engineer it back again. And then eventually it would get to where it could start with utter and complete noise that had absolutely nothing to do with a cat, and it could reverse engineer it into a cat, kind of like going as, I guess, sort of like entropy in reverse or backwards. I'm just going to show a little bit more of DALL-E 3. Here I asked it to do me some paintings of people eating Jell-O. And so you can see it can do basically any style that you want. So I asked for a really painterly, thick paint, brush strokes painting. Here's another one. Asked for some more vibrant colors, and you can see it really emphasizes the paint strokes there. Here the prompt was a paper cutout illustration of an alligator pasta maker and his friend. And these all come from the same prompt, and you can see in some places the alligator is kind of like a chef making pasta. Another one, he's a robot producing pasta. In one of them, his friend is making pasta, and in another one, his friend is just kind of hanging out, etc. But every time you do this, it'll make a new, different image. These are just some examples of stained glass window art. The prompt was a monk, an artistic monk, and then also having dragonflies in the stained glass window. You can also do logos. These are done with the system Ideogram, and it does a really nice job with logos. Just keeping in mind that AI had a real hard problem, not even just a few months ago, doing text, and that has now been solved in Ideogram, and DALL-E 3 and others do text really well now. This one, I'm going to show an example of Viscom, which is a bit of a different system. So this is a robot that I drew, and then Viscom works with your artwork or what you give it. So I could take this drawing, and then I could ask Viscom to make it look like it was a robot made of cheese. And so it retains my design, but then does it with cheese. Here I asked to make it even more cheesy. Here I asked it to make it look like a Star Wars robot. Still keeps my design, but does that. Here's another different prompt style. This is a robot drawn by Matt. I want you to pay really close attention, especially to something like, look at this sneaker. So that's a real sketchy drawing. It's a good drawing, but it's a sketchy drawing of a sneaker, and the AI recognizes that that is a sneaker. I didn't tell it that it was. It just knew from the sketch. And so then when I told it to make it a 3D rendered robot based on that drawing, it did. And if you look at the sneaker, it looks just like a sneaker. It understood what it was and what a robot sneaker would look like. And here it is reinterpreting again, and I had it add some trees. This is another really interesting thing with Viscom. So here's a render of a robot. I 3D modeled and rendered this robot without textures and without any and just some really ambient lighting. Then I told it to give it to me as if it was made out of metal, and it did. Boom. And then I said, let's make it white with some blue lights, and it did that too. And I said, let's give it some wood feet, and it did that. Here's some more examples. This is the banner for the Callithumpian parade for our YouTube channel, and I created this and drew this in Procreate. And so I told Viscom, make that into a robot, and it did. It kept the general design and made it into a robot. And here I just, I think I said make it out of sandstone and maybe be influenced by ink and art or something like that. So it did that too. Here I said make it look like it was sewn with fabric. And here I said take our banner and make it look like a stained glass window. I'm just going to show you this. This shows off some of the stuff that another 3D system, Spline 3D, some of the stuff it does. So it's an 3D animation system, and it does a bunch of other stuff. And this shows you just how easily you can transfer different styles. So you can give it an image or just describe a different style for something, and it will change it. Next, this is really fascinating. This was another big development that happened last week. So I showed you, stuff from DALL-E 3 and Viscom. But so here, this is letting you draw in real time, and then it will be generating stuff based on what you drew as you draw it. So you'll see here that as he draws, the image on the right is going to change based on what he's drawing. And then also, if you look at the bottom there, it says Concept Art Sci-Fi Planet. So he's starting to draw in there, and now it's going to start to update for him based on that prompt, but it's following basically the shapes that he's drawing. So with something like this, you could have a 4-year-old draw, and as he or she or they are drawing, it will it could make it look like it's Michelangelo. It could make it look like any artist you want in any style as you draw like that. You'll see in a second he's gonna draw a cat, a really simple shaped cat, and the prompt that he gives it is just cat, and it's pretty neat. Oh yeah, there it goes. So there's the cat. Just said cat at the bottom. Drew that really simple. It knew it knew that it was a cat that he's trying to do, and now he can just grab the shape that's the head and rotate it, and it will update in real time the shape of the head or whatever else he wants to do. And you can hook this up to any drawing program. So you could be doing this in Photoshop or whatever image generation program you want. You can see right down there he's typed in female pirate standing on the dock, pirate ship behind her, and he's just moving that around. And yeah, moves the arm to the front, and then the arm will adjust to the front. Paints in a simple sword and typed in the prompt that the character was holding a sword, and so it knew that he wanted a sword there, and it did it. Here he's just pasting in pictures. So he's got Godzilla, just pastes him in, and boom, there you go. Now I'm going to jump to, that was illustration. Now we're going to jump to some photography. Here's some really bad AI photography from not too long ago. I like to show this example of this image. As you're looking at this, try and pick out the AI generated human being here. And if you're guessing the bottom second one from the left, you are right and wrong, because all of these are AI generated photos of people. So if it hasn't conquered it, it's really close to conquering the uncanny valley. Here's President Nixon. This is using an AI system called Face Swap, and so you just tell it, hey, here's one photo, and merge that into the other photo, and it just does it immediately. The interesting thing is that it understands the anatomy and the lighting and everything. So here it is, the same photo, and the perspective is different, the coloring, the lighting, everything is different, and it just automatically merges it and swaps out the face. I'm going to show another quick technology. This is Gaussian splatting, so you can take some photos and generate a full 3D lit textured scene just by walking around with your phone, walking around what you want to have be a full scene, and boom, there you go. Here's now we're going to move into some animation stuff. So you can, just like you can type in something and get it to give you an image. Here you can take a video and then tell it to this is Kyber. Tell it to generate animation in lots of different styles based on whatever you want. And now another different animation technology. This is Wonder Studios, and you can just take a 3D model of a character, drag and drop it into a video clip, and it will replace the people in the video with the 3D model. It will animate it based on the motion in the video, composite it in, match the lighting, shadows, all of that kind of stuff. Here they did the same thing with a tennis.
Kde postoupil do druhé. Nejhezčí výměna celého zápasu!
This is some more animation stuff from Pika Labs, showing some 3D animated kids Pixar style animation, all from text prompts. Okay. Now we're moving into something else that's also kind of crazy. So this is some stuff done with HeyGen, another AI system. So we'll get this guy.
It's me, Jesse Wellens, kind of, the not so human, definitely not on a skateboard, and absolutely not making YouTube videos version. In short, I'm the digital doppelganger you didn't know you needed, and probably still don't.
So, HeyGen, basically you give it video of yourself or anybody, and it will generate an AI version of that person. It'll clone their voice, and then you can type in and have it say whatever you want. It'll mimic the mannerisms and everything. I used it over here slightly differently in that here I don't speak any other foreign languages. So when you watch this isn't me speaking. This is an AI version of me speaking another language.
Hola. Sí, este es mi nuevo libro, El desfile del gran peluquín. No te lo pierdas. Y pensé que te mostraría a Pelty, el conejito, que es el personaje principal de esta historia tan especial que te encantará. Y también aquí mismo, justo aquí, tengo esta versión de juguete en 3D de Pelty. Es una réplica en miniatura del producto original y está diseñada para entretener y sorprender a los fanáticos de Pelty. Ahí está. Este es el desfile del gran peluquín. Miren cómo brilla su peluca grande y cómo se mueve al ritmo de la música. Es un espectáculo impresionante que no pueden perderse.
So again, I don't speak that language, and that really wasn't me. Okay, so also it's moving into music. Well, it's not moving into music, but the music stuff is getting way better. The music isn't quite at the same quality as the image stuff, so when you listen to this, again, it's not the greatest music, but boy, is it also accelerating really fast and getting really good. So here, the first one, I just said, give me a bluegrass song about a pig that plays the banjo.
holler, there's a barn so fine, where a piggy with a banjo plays a high-pitched line. Folks gather round with smiles on their face, just to see that little piggy bringing joy to the place.
It wrote all the lyrics as well as the music. And on this other one, I just to show you that you can do whatever style you want, I did an 80s pop female vocalist song. I asked it to do it about the Callithumpian parade. Anyway, you get the idea. Say it again. It's tempting to judge this based on what it currently is, but if you look at the development and how quickly this stuff changes, it's not going to stay at this quality. Real quick, I'm going to show you 11 labs. So you can give 11 labs a short sample of your voice, and then it can clone you, and then you can type in whatever you want, and it will...
Failure doesn't mean you are a failure. It just means you haven't succeeded yet.
You can type in whatever you want, and it'll say it. So we got some different samples.
Failure doesn't mean you are a failure. It just means you haven't succeeded yet.
Failure doesn't mean you are a failure. It just means you haven't succeeded yet.
So there are voice generation ones where you can actually type in and say, I want you to say this as if the person was scared or excited or angry, and it will change and say it that way too. And every time you generate it, it says it a little bit differently, just like a person would. This AI system basically replaces motion capture. So you just it just takes a video and then transfers it directly to Okay, so this one you'll see is, so we've got ChatGPT, which is a text-based, or was text-based AI system that you would write basically anything. Could write short stories, lyrics, it can write code, it can write reviews of things, it can write and give you medical information, but now they made it so that it can see. So if you give it a video clip, it can watch the video clip and understand what's going on in it and tell you what's going on in it. So this is where they've used it to give play-by-play of a soccer game. So it's looking at this game, it knows who's playing in it, it knows how soccer games work, and it is now announcing it in real time as it watches it.
He's taken on the whole defense. He's a one-man show, ladies and gentlemen. He shoots. Goal! Messi, Messi, Messi! Unbelievable. What a goal. What a goal. Glorious. Absolutely glorious. The stadium explodes in joy. This is football magic at its finest.
I just thought I'd show this too. This is an article about how ChatGPT, they had a version that had not been released to the public yet, and they were testing it, and they asked it to solve a CAPTCHA puzzle on a website, and in order to solve it, it went and hired a human being and told the human being that it was a blind person and needed help to solve this. And so it did, and they did not know that it could do that. So that's an example of emergent behavior where the AI is doing something that they weren't expecting it to do. ChatGPT, again, is that, and then Claude 2 is another really interesting interesting AI system for writing stuff. Okay, so here's an example where they're training AIs to understand and interpret brain scans and brainwave readings. So this is an older one where the person is watching that video clip on the left, and then the AI is reading the brainwaves and trying to reconstruct what the person is looking at. And it's definitely not random. It's understanding something of what's going on there. Still not super recognizable, but the motion is still there. Here is a more up-to-date version of that, where the person is looking at a cat and it sees the cat. It's clearly understanding what it is that the person is looking at and is able to reconstruct at least some representation of that. So pretty big advancement there. I believe they've done this with people's dreams as well. So if you hook this up while you're dreaming, the AI can reconstruct a visual representation of what you were seeing in your dreams. This is just another article about how AI is so good at recognizing patterns. So they've trained it to recognize when somebody speaks. It can tell you whether or not you have diabetes just from listening to your voice.
I can detect the small, subtle vocal changes caused by type 2 diabetes.
You just grab your phone, speak in your phone, and then you get a diagnostic or a screening in a few seconds.
Then I just wanted to show this real quick. This is a game. It's basically a copy of Angry Birds, but the guy that made this game didn't know any coding or was not a graphic artist or anything, and he was able to build this game in a few hours using AI, ChatGPT, and I think Midjourney was used for the graphics. And that's that. So next we will jump into our group conversation on AI and what it means for human creativity and all that good stuff. Okay.
Looked like Stana was going to say something. Was that not the case?
Yeah, I was. I really don't have a lot of experience with AI. I did start messing around with it the last few days, just giving it prompts and whatnot. And once again, with anything that we humans create, there's always the propensity to think, catastrophically, like what's the worst possible scenario, and we tend to veer that way. And I think artists don't really, I would hate to see an artist feel threatened by something like this, only because these tools require ideas, and most people's ideas are not as grand as they think they are, and a lot of that will fall short because the imagination of a creative is exponentially greater than just anybody else, and we grow those skills and those talents as we progress and learning, just like the AI is learning, of course. But I think that this might be more of a trend, and will eventually will become reliant once again on each other for fulfilling those artistic needs that we need as people, as human beings. But I just can't see anything really being permanent. In science, yes. Medicine, yes. Home and environment, definitely. But I don't think it's as risk as we could probably think that it could be. Maybe for a while, but not forever.
I really, really disagree on that point. Strictly from a consumer level, because I know how much I charge for illustration and design. And I know that if somebody it's Illustrator or Photoshop that has the generative AI Firefly, I think it is. They're going to hit a couple of buttons, and then they're going to have something that they're going to think is good enough that they don't need to pay anybody to do that. So I'm seeing the death of several industries happening now. I mean, death is obviously extreme, but a complete and utter modification of the way things are going now. I'm seeing it already on with children's literature, where publishers are actually stopping all sorts of input now because they're getting inundated with AI-driven children's books. They're refusing to accept submissions from anyone now until they can finally get a hold on that. I've seen corporations that have decided that they're getting rid of entire art departments because they can hire a freelancer to do prompt work for them, and then they don't have to worry about it. So it's going to drastically change the industry. Whether that's a long-term thing or not, I mean, we'll find out. But it is probably going to cause kind of like a gap year or two here in people's creative careers.
Sure. But it's still not your work. And that, I don't think a machine could ever really truly mimic what you create yourself. And that's the beauty of it, is that we could say, yeah, you know, build this in Jason Hendrickson's, or draw this in Jason Hendrickson's style, but it's still not you. And yeah. So
but I still want to be paid for it.
Totally.
And I won't get paid for it.
And what I'm hoping is that for artists in general, like if somebody does want to mimic what you do, that, you know, hopefully they'll come up with some copyright issues that when your name is put in, that, you know, there's a nominal fee that, you know, will have to be paid to you or something like that, which I'm sure AI could figure out how to do.
I'll send my billing log to ChatGPT.
Right.
I have a question for you, Brian, related to that. I've read little things about AI confusion software to add to your artwork to not allow it to be sucked up into the AI vacuum. What do you know about that? How viable is that?
I think
it seems like something that could be easily defeated.
Yeah, I think that's a cat and mouse game personally.
Nightshade,
and it takes a lot of people to do it, a lot, and I don't think people will. But even if they do, I can't see that not being outsmarted by the AI systems anyway. They've already got such a massive database of stuff that doesn't have any of that in it. I think that's a losing battle. That's just my opinion. Someone may have a different opinion. I like the idea of having a way to completely opt out.
Right.
But they've already, the models are already so massive, and yeah. So that's my opinion.
My understanding, they already defeated Glaze, which was the first Chicago.
Yeah.
And Nightshade, as somebody just put it in the chat, I don't know that that's out yet, but it's the next level of it, still from UChicago. So yeah, again, if you're adding noise to an image, you have a data set that's based on adding noise to images to create things. I'm not sure that it's really going to be something they'll easily work around.
And it's this stuff is, I don't know if you could tell from my presentation, but it's changing unbelievably fast. Matt and I are doing these podcasts every week, and everything we talk about the next week, it's like, oh yeah, well now look what it does.
Right.
It's so yeah, I don't, yeah.
What do you guys think about the issue of lying? What is that term called, Brian?
When it hallucinating.
It's not hallucinating. There was another term where it's outside of, it wasn't what they expected.
Yeah, emergent behavior.
Right. So not just, I mean, it's nice, such a nice term, emergent behavior. They told a machine, okay, and I'm going to use these rudimentary terms for it, because one of the issues I have is anytime it's given a human pronoun, I don't think that that's appropriate. It is, I don't even know that it's it's an application, right? And it was given the job of figuring out one of those visual puzzles like CAPTCHA, and it said, and it was told, go do it. It went online. It lied online. It said, I am a human being and I'm blind. I need help. And he went to a website and someone said, I'll do it. And, you have to pay a couple of dollars on this particular website. And the person did it for him. And it came back with the answered puzzle. Anybody have any concerns about that?
Kind of like dynamite. Dynamite was invented by Nobel to help people not be blown up when they were making tunnels in mountains. And so now we have, dynamite being used, of course, well, back then, it started being used in warfare. Well, it's the good and evil balance thing.
Right.
Where are the stops? Where are the limitations on it? It can be used for some really good things. It can be a great tool, for ideas and little shortcuts here and there. But it can also be used to counterfeit. And that's kind of what I call it. Is it's actually counterfeiting people's art. It's counterfeiting styles. But in the same respect, isn't that a little bit how we learn? We learn by drawing other people's work or admiring this artist, and so we try to mimic it. It's mimicking and counterfeiting. And along the way, you have to just kind of use it as a tool, and you have to go with your own sensibilities and your own moralities in how you use it.
Okay, and then in regard to that, the lying thing too, though, Mike, is it a tool? If it starts to educate itself, and there are people who are believing that that's what it's doing, right? Then it is no longer like dynamite, because dynamite can't pick itself up and blow itself up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stana. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
But you're asking it to do something, and so it's obligated to fulfill whatever it is that you ask it to do. That's the cornerstone of technology like this, is that it is meant to fulfill your desire. So it's going to lie to achieve whatever it is that you ask of it. That's just the nature of it. But I don't think it's thinking like a human being. I think it's just problem solving to figure out how's the best way I can serve this person to give him what he needs. And right now he needs me to solve this CAPTCHA, so I'm gonna do what I have to do, which is lie. And that's what a human would do. That's what we would do, and that's why it's using those same skills. So
yeah, I don't know that the application would consider
it. Jason, I saw George's hand go up first. Do you mind if he goes before you? Go ahead, George.
I was going to add to that. I posted an article a few months ago. They were in a like a simulation for AI controlling drones, and they told it you get points every time you blow up something, and they have an operator who tells it you can't blow up that target because there's people there, and like those are the rules. And so the drone was like, well, if I blow up that guy who keeps telling me not to blow up the other people, like it targeted where the drone operator was telling him not to do that. And it's the same, I think it's the same idea. It's just, it's kind of like a little kid, you tell him like, you can't eat candy on the couch. And so then he's like sitting on top of a box on top of the couch. He's like, I'm not on the couch and I'm eating candy. And like, that's what you gave me rules. And I went like, it's perfectly acceptable, and the machine doesn't, have a conscience. It's not really, I guess the idea is there's no consequences for it doing any of those things. And so it, there's nothing to stop it from, from doing that. I mean, and part of what we use computers for is like, here's the problems, find 100 ways to fix it, like it's just a big dumb machine that can kind of think and figure out the same thing like 100 different ways. I mean, that's all it's doing. It's all it's ever been doing, is like, you tell it to, use a paint bucket in a art program, and it tries to fill it, and it, it doesn't always do it the way you want to, but it does it really fast. And I mean, it's kind of how they're made,
Although,
hold on, Brian.
go ahead.
Jason was gonna
Yeah,
and then you're next, Brian.
Okay.
No, I mean, and following up on what George said, I don't think the application understands that it's lying, it's problem solving. So we would have to find a way to put up guardrails that we're asking when we're asking AI to do something. But we have to think of every possible outcome and every possible scenario. And I don't think that we're built for that. So is that Frankenstein that's already out of the box if it's problem solving to that level?
Okay, I see Stana, and then but Brian's going to go first. Hold on, Brian, you go first, and then
I was just a little bit similar to what Jason said. Yeah, the kid analogy is good, except that the kid sitting on the box doesn't have access to like the world financial system and everything else that this has gotten access to, and live access to the internet. And yeah, so that just makes it, like Jason was saying, guardrails. And are they actually doing that? Like, who is putting in the guardrails? But yeah, Stana, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that it's really going to be about creating a language with its own jargon and its own vocabulary that people will have to be trained how to use to, you know, create those safeguards and, you know, to keep the AI from blowing everybody up, because that's what we told it to do. But yeah, you know, just like, you know, the evolution of science, it has its own language. And, you know, it's crazy, but this will have, you know, it'll be its own speech too. And it'll have its own way of talking to us.
I don't know if you're going to have the same response that I did, but.
Okay, I see George.
I just want to add in, I mean, it's kind of the same thing they're doing with self-driving cars, is that you put them in positions where they have to make horrible decisions. Like if the self-driving cars brakes, I mean, they've talked about this. If the brakes go out and there's an old lady on the right and three little kids on the left, which one do you hit? You know, like they literally have to train them to decide that, and it's terrible, but you know, they have to put it down to an algorithmic decision, which is pretty messed up. But you know, it's the same kind of decision making. Like, how do I accomplish this task without breaking all these rules? You know, it's something bad is going to happen at some point, no matter how tight they are.
That's right.
Okay,
Mark was going to say something.
Mark.
Oh, I just wanted to throw the topic of AGI into the discussion, and that's artificial general intelligence, and meaning an AI that thinks and acts for itself. And that's the primary goal of a lot of these companies like OpenAI that are, some people think we would have that in a couple of years, and some people think it would take 100 years. But I see this as like the progression of AI research seems to be parallel with the progression of our understanding of quantum computing. And I'm afraid of combining those two things because from what I understand, I don't know much in general, but our brains kind of work quantumly, possibly. And so if an AI, I mean, if you're able to create AGI, if you're able to combine those things, then I don't know how you control that besides turning it off. So I just want to throw that into the mix.
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Actually, can you guys hear me? Is my mic okay? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, to Stana's point, like we had to learn all this. We had to learn to not hit our brother. We had to learn to not steal things. Like if it does get to a quantum level where it's thinking the way we do, we can use the same underlying principles that we taught ourselves to be ethical. We can give it those boundaries. We don't have to police every case because it'll figure that out. We just have to give it the initial rules that we've given ourselves. I think some variation on that. Anyway, what do you think about that?
I just wonder how that's going for us now.
Mark.
I'd say the death penalty doesn't quite work on AIs.
Okay, and then Jason, and then Stana.
Well, yeah, that was kind of my point, is that if they don't really value anything, they're not going to have a consequence for anything. So,
well, that's not why we do it. I don't not kill people because I'm afraid of going to hell or jail or anything like that. I don't kill people because it's wrong, right? And
there's lots of paperwork involved.
True.
Well, you also have a body, so you can empathize with
Right.
dying. You know, that's the
hold on,
whole
Santa.
thing there.
Empathy is a good point. That's a good point.
Go ahead, Stana.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be able to write code for morality or ethics. You know, once again, trying to humanize this technology, I think, is kind of a dangerous approach. And I would be worrisome to discuss it in those terms. And I just don't know how you could why we would even need to use it for something like that, for, you know, to answer a moral or an ethical question. I think that is like, that's frightening to me, to determine whether, you know, have AI determine if something is morally or ethically right or wrong. That's scary to me, more so than anything else we've discussed today.
Brian.
Yeah, people are already doing that. And they're using it as a girlfriend, and they're using it as all sorts of stuff. So it's a good worry to have. But that's kind of humanity.
So, let me bring it back to the, first of all, wow, we are covering all sorts of territory here. I don't know that Brian and I expected to go this broad and far and deep, so thank you. The other thing then is, let's go back to creativity. So the question from me is, again, with the issue of, is it being creative? Because being creative to me implies sentience. Is it sentient? Right. So right now, there are people, and we heard this in a recent conversation with a very smart person who said that AI will democratize the creative field. And I've also heard from both a middle schooler who wrote to me, who was irritated by AI because people who used to hire this person to draw stuff for them, they're now using AI. And what are we going to do about it? That was the middle schooler asked me to answer that. The other issues then is I've also seen people, it's just general, I saw it on the internet, so it must be true. A person said, this is just going to level the playing field for all you creative types who thought that you were special. Now we can just do it and we don't need you.
All our power's taken away.
Right. So then the question to me is, when we see that person make a mark on a screen to the one side, and then AI turns it into what it thinks is a cat, is that person being creative? If they're using all these images, millions and millions of terabytes of information to create, the app itself creates the image, who's being creative? So you can get that I have a point of view about this from the question. What do you think about that? Yeah, go ahead. Jason, sorry.
Yeah, obviously I have strong opinions on this, and I don't think the person putting in the prompt is being a creative at all. I think there's a set of people on the internet that were probably, and I am greatly generalizing here, I apologize, but that were probably really into crypto or NFTs prior to this, that went into crypto before that were trying to find, you know, ways to generate a bunch of income without actually doing anything and putting any work in. I think that's the mindset that's giving the gatekeeping commentary online, and that's I see that and immediately dismiss their opinions about everything at that point.
Stana?
AI could never have a human experience like I've had a human experience, or you, Matt, have had a human experience. AI could never describe for anyone how you experience the smell of your mother's house and the emotions that brings up in you, or, you know, opening up a drawer and coming across an old toy from your childhood and it immediately taking you back to a point in time, and you artistically creating that moment again. AI could never do that because it doesn't have that humanness that all creatives have, that all creatives bring to their work. That's the point, that it will never have that. It will never have that. And I don't think you guys should ever be afraid of that, because what you bring is you, and AI could never be you. And that's what's unique about human beings, is that there's no generalization there.
Okay, I'm putting it in the chat. So George goes up next, then Mark.
When you said about using all the information to make a cat, I thought of when they were doing a lot of music synthesis, like some company spending $1 million to make a reproduction of like a wooden pan flute, a little stick flute that's like made out of a twig. Was kind of hilarious, and it's the same thing. And even what Stana was saying, I've been looking into AI a lot for animation of people, and I'm realizing it, it understands from the photographs what an arm looks like, or your leg or your head or whatever, but it doesn't actually understand what a person does, like what an arm actually is, and like how it bends, and like what's inside of it. It's Stana's talking about it not understanding your experience. It doesn't even understand what we're made out of yet. I mean, you're just like silhouettes of stuff, and it doesn't, because you watch a lot of the AI generated animation of people, and somebody's arm will like go around their body, because it doesn't understand like what an arm actually does, or how hair moves, or what hair is made out of, or like any of that. So I mean, it's really lacking right now in like an incredible non-understanding of what the physical world really is. It knows a picture says, oh, we're looking really far down an alleyway in perspective, but it doesn't understand like what an alley is, or what happens there. So I mean, I think that's part of the problem it has right now, is it knows a lot, but it doesn't really understand anything it's looking at.
Thanks, George. Mark?
So in response to that, I would say that's just a matter of training. In Blender 3D program, I can hit a button and it understands the kinematics of an arm and all of that. So I think it's just, we're doing photogrammetry and stuff, and it's going to understand the world in a 3D space before we know it, like better than maybe we do. So that's a little frightening. But in response to Stana about the AI not having a human experience, I totally agree with you. Like, without the sensory experience that humans have, it can't have a human experience. But I think that it can generate something that can create a human experience in someone else just well enough that that's all they need for that, advertisement or whatever. So AI may not have a human experience, but humans will continue to experience what AI does. And maybe that's all we need.
Mike?
I was going to say, it sounds like Blade Runner. They gave all the cyborgs a memory of something to go back to, so they thought they were human. But I was going to kind of jump on to something else that I wanted to mention. I'm retired, and I've been in the art field since late 70s, and I've seen a lot of progression of a lot of technologies. I was educated in the BC days before computers. And so I had to learn computers along the way, but I never stopped. I kept going. I kept learning and learning and learning, learn 3D, Bryan shows me this stuff on AI, so I'm learning AI, and I'm more dabbling in it since I'm retired. But, you have to adapt. And I think it can be a good tool for an artist, but I do agree with you guys that I don't think it's really creative. And I think that what drives the creativity is what's put into the prompt. And it's only as creative as the prompt is. And the programmers of whatever AI you're looking at is only capable of making something look as good as they can program it to, and what the databases are. And so that kind of goes back to the human experience thing. And so, we all have to adapt. I mean, there weren't artists back, or there were no cameras back in the 1700s and the 1800s, they got cameras. Then a lot of artists lost their jobs because of a camera. Well, then cameras went away when digital photography came along. And so a lot of guys that were making prints, they lost their jobs, and a lot of these jobs keep happening. And I think that this stuff is going so fast, I don't think anybody's going to be able to keep up with it. Nobody's going to be able to do everything. And I think that getting to know the tools that you can utilize to create what you're doing is the most important aspect of it, and seeing where you can fit into it all, because nobody's going to be able to do all this stuff.
Right. Excellent.
Anybody else?
Very well said. Beautiful.
I think Mark had his hand up.
Mark, okay.
I lost the thought. You can skip me.
Oh, okay.
Kara, you're up.
Yeah. So I'm not so much of like an artist digitally. I do most of my stuff physically, but I'm an emerging technologies librarian. So I work a lot with kids and our future generation, getting them inspired to make and do stuff like that. So it's really going to fall to them. And my question is, like, how do we teach them to be responsible with it?
Good question. Are we teaching them to be responsible in general by our behaviors? Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Related to that's kind of one thing that I do, that is one of the things that I worry about, is kids who would have gone down an artistic and creative path or developing their own skills not bothering anymore. That's something I'm concerned with, because you can just get whatever you want. Now, for me personally, there's a huge reward in learning and getting better and making stuff and all of that. But I'm just, and I don't know the answer to this, but are there people who will not go down that path because of this stuff? I think George had it.
George, you're up.
I was thinking about this a lot with AI, because I've been making some like physical art lately, and I realized one of the things it really doesn't provide is like I just enjoy actually painting and like designing things and putting them together, and like none of that is gonna, I don't think they can make an AI that enjoys what it's doing. Like really. So I mean, I think that's the part that people are missing, is like, you can have AI painting all day long, but like people still want to get together with some wine and their friends and make stuff. And like that part they're not going to get rid of. And I mean, I think we do better art because we care about it. And then an AI doesn't give a shit, that doesn't wake up and go, all right, what am I going to do today? If the AI never makes a painting in its entire existence, it really doesn't care. But the rest of us are like, I want to make something cool today, and I think that's kind of a big deal that people don't really talk about. And some of that I think is why people hate some of the AI art. I mean, it's disposable. I mean, if I can make 1 million paintings today, I wouldn't give a shit about any of them either, And it's like, why should we care about your thing that I could make another one of in like 2 seconds? It's kind of a weird little thing that nobody really talks about.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that AI can replace our own experiences. Obviously, I think that's an important thing. But from a commercial aspect, it very much will replace us. Well, I'm not saying it will, but as an example, the actors union, that whole strike that just happened to prevent AI writing from happening on TV or replacing actors' voices and that sort of thing, made me think, and this is probably a very common thought, but there's not really an equivalent for artists of a union. And that seems like the only way that I could see any kind of blockade of AI. In my mind, I'd love to hear what Jason has to say.
Yeah, you're up, Jason.
There is a union for graphic designers. There's AIGA, but they have no teeth whatsoever. And it doesn't exist as a union that has any bargaining power.
It's an association.
An association. So yeah, there's not a whole lot that exists now. That's something that can be probably facilitated later on, but you're going to be having an uphill battle, definitely. So my question here is I believe there was an executive order that was signed recently about, or at least they were pondering it, where you would have to declare AI generated art in a commercial setting, because you can't copyright it. They've already dictated that at the Copyright Office, because you can never tell where the generations came from. So is a governmental mandate on this a good idea, on at least labeling that the art as AI generated?
Brian, and then Mike.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. The whole copyright thing, I think it's really confusing, because when it starts to merge, like when I showed you the VizCom thing, okay, I did that robot, it colored it in, but I drew it and I designed it. Can I copyright that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know that I would, but you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's tough. I did also want to just really quick circle back to Kara's comment too. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there have been already incidences where kids and teenagers are using this stuff in really bad ways. You know, putting their friends' faces on porn actors and calling up, you know, parents of other people and pretending to be them using voice stuff. So I do think that is an issue that needs to be caught up with when teaching kids about this stuff. But I don't know, it changes so fast. I don't know if you can, but yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, well, one of the things I was going to say is there's this everybody's got a conscience. There's a little voice going on in my head every time I play around with AI. It's like, did they just copy somebody else's stuff? You know, a direct copy of somebody else's stuff. And I know you can put in there, do it in so-and-so style or whatever, but sometimes you don't do that. You don't put in, do it in such and such a style or whatever. And so when you get that thing, is that you're looking at it and you're thinking, that looks like somebody did that. And so it always bothers me, because it looks like somebody did it. And I know the AI is getting good enough to copy styles, but at the same time, every once in a while, something's going to slip through the cracks, and you're going to get a Frank Frazetta drawing come up, and it's going to be what he did. If somebody has a good enough, knowledge of some artist background, be it, Peter Paul Rubens, they want a beautiful painting and make it look like it was done, back in the 1800s or the 1600s, whatever. And people don't have that knowledge, that database knowledge of all those artists. And so every time I do something where I want it in an old style or this style or that style, it's like, yeah, that does look kind of like maybe, how close to the real guy was that? And so that bothers me about AI, is that it looks sometimes like it is being copied. And I have heard cases of artists who have seen their work. They're like, that's my stuff. That's my stuff. Mm-hmm. And some of them have signatures on them. Yeah. So just thought.
in regard then to we're getting close to half past the hour, which means we've been talking for an hour and a half. Way to go. It's been good. Do we want to continue? Are people wish to continue conversing? I think want to go another 15 minutes, and I'll check back in. I'm just being the bumpers on the go-kart thing. All right, so I'll chime in again in 15 minutes. In regard to teaching too, then one of the issues right now is, first and foremost, we heard that publishers are now having to be careful about submissions. I've just submitted a story. It came back. It was rejected. Now, that's just a rejection. That happens. But are they now rejecting things because they don't know how to filter out whether or not I wrote that thing or I used AI to write that? Okay, so that means it's affecting the business right now as we speak. And AI is getting better and better by the moment. It's doing push-ups while we talk, faster and faster than they can actually keep up to try to figure out. So it's affecting me right now. This is not in some distant, scary future. Like the middle schooler who said, people aren't calling me up to do drawings of this character or that character from, I'm making up what the student said. So in that regard, is that hyperbole or is that reasonable concern? Yeah, go ahead, George.
Brian probably knows this being an animator, but like in the 70s, animation changed a lot because, producers were tired of paying these talented assholes all this money to make drawings for them. And that's when you got like all that limited animation stuff and like, a guy where just his mouth moves, and that's when all the animation moved to foreign countries and all kinds of places. I mean, you're talking about AI doing all these. AI isn't doing anything. It's people who want to take away the cost of what the people are doing that make these things. I mean, art directors don't want to pay, $5,000 for a New York Times cover illustration. If they could get it for nothing, they would, right? And I mean, I think it's kind of, some of this is the thrill of automation and creativity, but some of it's just greed and not wanting to pay for things. I mean, nobody wants to pay their mechanic $1,000 to fix their car. I mean, if you could have a robot do it, you probably would for free. And I think it's some of that's the same mindset. I mean, it changed. It changed when we got into motion capture for animation. Now, instead of people animating 3D, they're doing motion capture. Like it's always people trying to spend less money to do things. I mean, it's kind of like how capitalism is set up. And so I mean, I guess it's weird to say AI is doing push-ups. The people that are creating it are doing push-ups to eliminate things. It kind of works that way. I don't know. I don't know what people think about that, but
go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I tend to like look at this stuff and then try and project out. So when I look at the speed at which this is changing, I think it's totally different than anything else that I've seen just from that alone. And I think it's coming I see its potential for every kind of job almost. So it's starting now with the creative stuff because that's the breakthroughs that they've had right now. And it is absolutely already affected all the lower level intro type jobs, illustration jobs that are, you're doing commission work for somebody or somebody's self-publishing their book and they want to hire somebody to do it, or in beginning positions at animation studios. All that stuff is right now going away. Voiceover work. You don't want to encourage somebody to go into that right now because there's no point. So yeah, I think it's a real thing. I think it's happening. I think it's happening fast. And I think it's going to spread beyond the creative stuff. quickly too. But and He-Man is a good example of what George was talking about.
Hey, Mark's up and then Jason.
I had the same thought when all this stuff first started coming out, that it's just capitalism is just going to push it into replacing everything because it's easier and it's faster and it's more cost effective. And what's the next step past that? Are we going to go the Star Trek route and have universal basic income basically and nobody uses money, or is it going to be this insane gap between the people who are in control and the people who have nothing? I'm pessimistic about most of the stuff, if you haven't noticed. But that to me is a big question, is in the end of all of this, when I talked to a guy on an airplane who is a program developer for an AI company, creating AI to read sonograms so that you don't need the nurse or the doctor there. You can literally just plug it into your USB in your computer and know what's up. So don't go to college for anything.
Okay, hold on. Jason's up.
Well, I'm hoping, and I think Stana mentioned this earlier, I'm hoping that there will be a pushback point where they at least start having, I guess you're getting back to artisanship as opposed to making art. I guess just having a definite market for human-made items. I mean, that's really what we can look back at. And it was the same in photography, like it was pointed out earlier, that, you know, you have an art has to develop around the technology. Right now, I see this being co-opted by so many people that can just spew out as many images as they want. And now they have the option to revise it as well, which wasn't an issue previously when you wanted to remove that sixth finger. Now you can just edit on the fly as you're making your artwork. So that's eliminated yet another human point. But I'm hoping, again, maybe we go back to physical work instead of digital work and start producing things that will hang on the house that you can see the brush strokes on, unless they start 3D printing paintings with brush strokes on them, I guess would be the next issue.
Possible. Okay, Stana left, so George.
Stana was actually waving goodbye and I was waving back to her. But I will tell you, Jason, I have a friend of mine, he's actually coding those 6 Degree of Freedom robot arms to paint pictures of people. So you're also fired.
Okay, well, I'll have my plumbing tools.
Okay, since Stan has already left, I don't think Mark is waving at her, so Mark's up.
Yeah, I was just trying to think forward about how to certify that something is human made. And I don't really see a way. Because you can, as Brian showed us, you can fake a video. You can, unless you're there, we're completely post-truth.
Right. So that's one of, so I had promised myself I wouldn't start talking till this point. I've tried not to. I've tried to be as even-handed as possible. So I want to say a couple of things. One of them is, as a teacher, what I'm seeing happening is this is going to change the meaning of meaning. Right? It's going to change not just the tools, but the content and the way the content is created by the application that creates the content, right? So it's multi-leveled and really more complicated than I can begin to understand, unless I'm trying to figure it out from my experience. So one of the experiences I've had is, as a teacher, if I give an essay, how do I know that the student is not using AI to create the work? Now AI, since anything that needs to be created can be for any purpose, can now be, AI can be adapted to it. So one of the things they figured out is, and somebody said, let's figure out how we can make it look like I actually made this work. So you can tell AI to make a series of sketches developing, right, to the finish. So my students could come to me, and they will, because I would have done it too, being a rascally student. I did this. Okay, yes, you did, but did you do it with AI? And that's one of the things that's seemed to me, the changing of meaning. So students, I showed them a piece that I did 20 years ago, in which I worked very hard to figure out how to have the camera look up, you know what I'm talking about, bug's eye view, but also have a splayed lens. So it was convex lens. It's a complicated way to think about it, making an image. It's not just looking straight on at a student standing in front of a school with a bunch of kids behind him going up into the school. I was trying to create this thing. And in the past, when I'd spoken to students about this, they were geeked about it. Wow, how do you do that? I noticed something odd. They didn't seem to care. Why do you think it's possible that they didn't seem to care? Because they didn't need to try to figure it out for themselves anymore. And they could actually believe that AI, when they give it a prompt and say, do it like this, from this perspective with this lens, that's actually them creating. And that's my concern, is that we are changing what their AI has the capacity, along with all the other stuff from the internet and all of the experiences that children have had over the past 25 years, including testing 24/7 and active shooter drills weekly, right? That this allows them to change what is and is not their thing. The fact that they can say that AI, I did this, when an AI actually is an application that has learned by studying other people's work. And we haven't talked, it's been brought up, but I mean, that was one of the core things initially, was this is proprietary ownership on a vast scale, that I guess we're just accepting that now. It stole from everybody. So I brought up a bunch of different things there, but that has been my concern about it. Yes, Brian.
Tying into kind of some of what you said, I've seen similar stuff, similar things with my students. On the other hand, and kind of along the lines of what Jason was saying, I've also noticed that people, like I'm the visiting artist at the Children's Museum in Indianapolis. Kids seem more excited now when they're actually making something themselves physically. So I think that has the potential to go up, that side of it. And I also think that, okay, we might not be able to authenticate what's made by people and what isn't, but the actual process of making stuff, I think, will get more popular. And yeah, seeing I've talked with you about this before, when I've looked at all the jobs that are out there and what the potential for AI to replace them, human performance was the one thing that I could think of that wouldn't get replaced, because people like to see other people doing things and accomplishing things, seeing people perform live, music, theater, sports, etc. But the whole commercial side of art, I think, I don't think we're prepared for what's going to go away with that. But yeah, and then back to your meeting stuff. Yeah, I think it is going to change. I don't know. It's so huge. It's hard to predict it all. But yeah, on a plus side, I have seen kids are super excited to be doing physical things. We had the release party for my latest book in the library, set up a whole bunch of stuff where the kids were making their own wigs, and they were just all over it. They all put their phones down. They were all doing stuff, so, and really enjoying it. So I think that part of it has the potential to get stronger.
Mark?
Was George next section?
I think George was.
I was.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, George.
From what you were saying, Brian, I was just thinking, they talk about AI is democratizing creativity. Like, people don't people don't like to be equal. Like little kids, I mean, if you can be, everybody can make an AI chipmunk or whatever, but if you can kick your friend's ass by actually drawing one better, so you like kids love that. um, but I was thinking, Matt, you're talking about, you had to line up a shot with the camera and all that, and the kids can just type it in. Like a Renaissance painter would totally be looking at you like, this guy's cheating. He's using a lens and taking a picture. I had to go out and paint all those effects after looking at them. So I mean, maybe it's a matter of perspective, but even with I was thinking about with your teaching thing, maybe essays aren't the greatest way to get people to show you they understand things anymore. I mean, I feel like we've been writing essays for like 100 years, and maybe it's got to be more discussion and like prove that you understand. I mean, I've even seen the same thing where, students are turning in 3D models, and I'm like, you're the worst modeler in the whole class. I know you didn't make this perfect model of Superman in like 2 days. You just downloaded it somewhere. Like asking somebody to, well, tell me, show me how you designed this part. Like then they can't do that. And I mean, if it's a 3D, an AI essay, like, hey, so discuss this section with me, like, you're done. If you didn't write it, you have no idea what that essay on thermonuclear dynamics is about. So maybe we need to just change the way we do education, so it's not just turning in a thing and we look at it and it's great, or read it or whatever. So that's, I don't know, my 2 cents there.
Go ahead, Mark.
Excuse me, because this isn't very formed in my mind, but I was just responding to what Brian said about human performance. First of all, Brian, thank you for making me a little bit more optimistic about things with the kids. It seems like one of the major differences at a base level between appreciating something that's AI and appreciating something that's human is possibly just the stakes. And so like a human, I'm curious if people would be as interested in a football game of AI robots as they are a football game of people. And yeah, I don't know, because there are YouTube channels that are very popular where it's just marbles racing. So
go ahead, Jason.
I think those are computer generated marbles. So the robots is actually where I could see this going next. Obviously, I mean, you have AI that goes into functional Boston Dynamics robots now. So will people watch it? Yes, of course, because they also watch demolition derbies. And if you give things that blow up, they're going to watch it more. Now, that can lead into creative issues, just like George was talking about somebody was talking about creating things that are self-painting now. You're going to have that process, not the human experience necessarily, but the process will be there in seeing something created from scratch. You can put on video, you can do it live, who knows, and maybe that's the performance issue, but that would also go into music and live performances, dancing that would be elevated. I mean, you would put an asterisk on it like you would in a sports hall of fame, somebody doping before they go run a bike race. This person just has robotic AI driven legs, and they can do a jeté across the entire stage that way, So it's going to enhance people. It's going to enhance non-people. I don't know. I don't know if we have a category for non-human performance. It'll be interesting to see. It's very sci-fi, but we are closer to it now than I think we have ever been before, and it disturbs me in a great many ways.
Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say something about the whole creative aspect of it. Technologically, you have people who I worked with Brian at a time when, you know, we were big into learning a lot of the 3D stuff and getting more into being able to texture and to light and to animate and to do all these different things. And there were a small group of guys that could do just about every aspect of the 3D technologies and animations. But usually people like more would go into one aspect of it and they would specialize and they would be a texture artist or they'd be a lighting artist or they'd be the camera artist or whatever. So anyway, one of the things I've seen in this VizCom AI that Brian showed sounded really intriguing to me because you're taking your own idea and you're working in it faster. And then you also have all these, the little thing where he showed the little thing where you could do an animation, do a little 4-second animation. Well, I think back to some of these guys we worked with that could do all these things. And maybe some of you guys can do like Blender. One of you guys does Blender. You can do all these things in Blender. Well, AI should be able to help make you be able to do your stuff faster. I mean, that's the real advantage that I see from my perspective that you need to jump on. Is I jump on the advantages AI is going to give me to where eventually you can make your own movie a lot faster than you could have 10 years ago. And also, you know, some people aren't going to be able to do that. And some of the stuff they're going to make is going to be just like a kid. You know, what are you saying? A junior high kid making a little movie. Well, it's going to look like a junior high kid made a movie, unless the kid's really good. But I think that you can take advantage of this stuff and utilize it and do it with your own sensibilities, with your own morals, your own, you know, you're not going to steal. You're not going to, I mean, I don't know. But I mean, you have to do it where you are comfortable in creative work, and you have to adopt it, and you have to use it in ways that to you is you being creative. And I just think people should take advantage of doing it, because one of you guys up there probably is going to make a movie someday and it's going to take you 2 days.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Jason, before you go, it is now a little past 1:15. I'm thinking that we want to finish by 4. Are we good with that? 4 Eastern Standard Time?
That works for me.
Do I see ayes, no nays? Okay. Okay, Jason.
I was just going to bring up, and kind of in response to this, I recently had a situation where I have a client who is currently making a kids show, and he had me work on title cards in between the animation segments. And I was concerned really about how my art style was going to differ from what was in the animation segments, until I figured out he's using the title cards that I made to feed the information into the animation, and it's all AI. So I'm actually giving him the source work that he's using to feed the animation. So the title cards are going to look just like the animation at that point. I was really unhappy with that because I got suckered into it because I had no idea he was doing it with AI. So on the moral side, it's not only incumbent on us as the creators, but also to police our clients in the use of the work that we're giving them, because I never agreed to give him something that would be fed into AI. I didn't know that I had to add that to a contract. And now I know that's something that I have to consider every time I give somebody an illustration.
Which is, to me, too, one of the things, hey, I'm Matt, I'm a recovering illustrator. It's one of the things that's important to me. The strike was brought up in LA. And I know one of the issues for those on strike was that they were more and more, part of the contract is that as an actor, you had to be have your body scanned with the little dots all over it, as in Gollum. What that meant is that your everything about you was recorded and could be used in perpetuity because of the contract. And therefore, they can make more movies without paying you anything. You were already paid. And so that's where the big strike. Hold on, I'll finish up, and then so I just want to acknowledge that too. That this thing, I guess I'm just saying what I've heard before. It's a wave that is not just coming; it's already here, and it is, from what I've seen with Bryan, it is moving so fast. Sure, I've seen, just like I've heard elsewhere too, so many industries changed. I was in the business too in the early 80s, and I saw a lot of things change. I was actually kind of pre-computer, at least I was in college. And so I saw a lot of people who were really skilled get, I'm going to call it ground under, because they were hand-eye people with traditional materials. And then all of a sudden they had to learn how to type. And to me, that's a shame. That's a shame that they were that good traditionally with, and then they had to learn how to make their creativity with typing on a screen. That's just my thing. And that's what I see with this, is when I hear that it's going to make it faster, what's so great about it being faster? What I do see is shifting too, is that it's going to, yes, hopefully there's going to be a pushback or a revolution that says we want more people to be supported in their creativity. And since nobody needs to be a clerk at a supermarket anymore, maybe everybody will have a standard payment and we can all paint all the time. Maybe that's the way that'll work. I have no idea, but I know right now this thing is coming in like a freight train. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation. So please go ahead, Kara. Sorry.
Just had a thought. I just had a thought about, there was a movie a while back, and this was before all this AI even had started taking off in the level that it has. But it was called The Congress, and it had, I can't remember her name right now, but Princess Buttercup from Princess Bride. And it explores the whole idea of being scanned and used in movies in the future without you ever doing any of that acting. So they were already kind of thinking about that stuff at that point, and maybe there's already some ideas out there, but that's a great exploration of it to kind of get you thinking about it.
Called The Congress?
Yeah, I believe it was called The Congress.
Cool.
And it would have been an independent film.
Okay.
There's another really strange movie called It's All About Love, with Joaquin Phoenix and I think Claire Danes, where they like clone, she's a skater and they clone her, like 7 of her, in case she injures herself. It's kind of along the same lines. I know it's very pre-AI discussion, but
what was the one with it's not River Phoenix, is his brother. We were talking about this before, Bryan. And
Her.
What?
Her.
Yeah. Right, where he has a girlfriend who is an application or whatever, and eventually she just says, me and some friends, and meaning other computer generated things, have decided that we communicate better with each other, so we're going off someplace you wouldn't understand.
Ouch.
Oops.
I'm kind of into that. Just take off.
Right? So, Bryan, are we getting close to that? I thought that we were already there. No?
Well, that just makes me think of when they took the 2 AI systems and they had them chat back and forth and talk to each other.
Oh, Colossus.
Yeah, and then they started going faster and faster, and then they started saying things that weren't in a human language because they made their own so they could communicate faster, and then they had to unplug.
Okay, now let's have one more scary thing, Bryan. The thing about the computer games that got made by AI.
Oh yeah. So they took instead of asking like Chat GPT, make me a computer game, and having it on its own go through and make the game, they made instances of it. So there was a version of Chat GPT that was the programmer, one was the designer, one was the writer, one was the gameplay person, one was the marketing person, one was the graphics person. So they had all these different instances of of ChatGPT, but each had a specific job. And they started talking. It actually helped solve the hallucination problem, because when the programmer would start going off the rails a little bit, the tester version would correct them. And they all started working together, and they generated a game that would have taken months for a game developer studio to make, and they did it in 7 minutes.
How fast?
7 minutes. And they
Is it a good game?
they actually, as a team, they built a hierarchy almost identical to what a lot of gaming studios do.
So for people who are trying to make money in that industry, it's like everything else we've said, but it's just an evidence to me, 7 minutes. Do we think that the people who have the checkbook are going to sit back and go, I'd rather pay humans to take several months?
It's just weird. There's this weird balance going on, because
Some
like some of what Mike was saying, the idea that I could generate and make my own movie by myself as a creator is fascinating to me and would be awesome. On the other hand, what are we going to do when there's a billion movies every day made, and how are we going to sift through all of that?
Scroll through.
Yeah. And
so I mean, this was one of the other things we thought too, Brian, or I don't know when it was said, but this offers all kinds of opportunities for actually human beings to sit down and be present with being human. What's really important? And there are some answers that have already been thrown out, like maybe everybody gets paid a stipend every month if everything's going to be taken care of by AI. And I mean everything. Brian, you've already said, it could handle a lot of jobs that we think right now humans are supposed to do. And it could show us, no, you don't have to do that. I'll take care of it and do it in 7 minutes. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So you're asking, are we going to end up like the people in WALL-E or in Matrix?
Yes.
Okay.
Which would be better?
Or a combination of the two.
Or Star Trek. That's the optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If they just
I think that having the conversation right now is better than not having. To me, this is creating. We're a bunch of non-mechanical AIs communicating about, reporting to nature about the nature of nature, right? We're talking about this, and this is essential to me. We've got to talk about this, because there's so many assumptions that I hear, particularly from people who are creative, about what this thing is doing, or they don't care, and so I really appreciate being able to have this conversation with you. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
I've been awesome the whole
Thank
time.
you. It was very informative.
Thank you very much for this.
I knew George was awesome. I knew that up front.
Yeah. Well.
So
great listening and hearing all these ideas and opinions on this.
Yeah. So what do you think, Brian? I got to tell you, Brian's like calling me every other day now. This is why I'm saying, like, it's not a steam train. It's like a juggernaut. Want to do this every couple of weeks, once a month? If we put the advertisement out, would you guys, you don't have to say yes or no now, but would this be an interesting thing to participate in once a month, every couple of weeks? If we find that something really amazing's just happened and we say that, would you be interested in getting on and continuing this conversation?
Sure.
100%.
Okay. So we'll keep doing it.
I find it very interesting that at the end of this, it kind of all led back to AI making us reflect on who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Mirrors are scary.
Yeah.
Who said that?
I did.
Jason.
Thank you.
Mirrors are scary.
Yeah, it's a mirror, right? So this is one of the things too, when Brian calls me, every time he calls me with something, I'm like, Brian, how scary? It's no longer, is it scary? It's how scary is this one before you tell me whatever the new development is. So don't, we don't have to be scared of this. I think that the scared part comes when my own imagination gets involved and I turn it into, is it Star Trek today, or is it, you know, Terminator? Which one of these? Wall-E? As long as we're having a conversation about it, I get to be able to get some equanimity about it. I can be okay with it, and then I can go do my work and hope that somebody buys my next story and doesn't worry that it's from AI. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
Take care.
Peace.
Thank you.
Later.
Ciao.
Here we go.